It's Danielle, aka Dani Gossip Girl. I've got the scoop on Bravo and Blinds. Let's go.
The premiere episode of Pop Culture Expose, I have asked my fellow content creator, podcast hosts, and most importantly, soul sisters to join me today. Thank you, ladies. So, joining us today is someone who truly embodies a love for the history and drama of pop culture, Cassandra Crose. Our paths crossed almost a year ago as we both had collaboration with the man behind the blinds, anti-lawyer, but her experience has forever changed her life and honestly the worst of ways, but she's hopefully going to come out on the other end of the rainbow at the end of all of this, hopefully. But details on this can be found on any of my Dani Gossip Girl accounts and upcoming once we get to episode 9. We're not going to get into that today, but Cassandra is a pop culture enthusiast who has an incredible talent for uncovering forgotten gems from Hollywood's past and connecting them to stories to today. With a deep knowledge of classic cinema and a passion for all things entertainment, Cassandra brings a fresh perspective to the early history of Hollywood, bridging the gap between then and now. She really loves herself some nostalgia. We're excited to dive into her encyclopedia knowledge of history and hear her take on the stars of yesterday continue to influence the stars of today. So, welcome, Cassandra.
Wow, thank you. What an introduction. That's
Very
that's amazing. Yeah, thank you. And I do say like the motto of Cassandra Explains It All is we're taking a magnifying glass to all of our treasures from the past, and sometimes when you take a magnifying glass to things, it's like you get a picture, a way up closer picture of what's going on. You might learn new trivia. Also, you might find some disturbing things that you want to burn with that magnifying glass, right?
beautifully
Absolutely.
said.
hmm
Beautifully said. And before I pass it off to our next guest, Cassandra, I want you to explain to the audience real quick. And before we forget, how can everyone find you?
Imagine me as Clarissa, basically. And I do a podcast called Cassandra Explains It All, but I also do a podcast called Drenched in Drama, which does explore, the uncovering of NT Lawyer, the man behind the blind items. And I go into detail about our relationship, and I've kind of branched out into covering lots of different types of predators, and really just this web of celebrity gossip and how it's so toxic to our culture, but also how gossip is essential to our culture. And of course, like you said, like there's a lot of nostalgia sprinkled in too, because I'm just like an 80s, 90s kid.
A girl after my very heart. And thank you so much.
But and sorry,
Yeah,
and just to answer fully, I mean, you can find us on Patreon is where the more R-rated stuff is going to be. But I do have, Spotify, Apple, pretty much anywhere you can find podcasts and Instagram.
so make sure to check out Drenched in Drama. Next up, we have, and I'm thrilled to introduce the co host of the popular podcast, Pop Culture Green Room, Kimberly Bryant, who I've had the pleasure of collaborating and becoming friends with this year as well. Kimberly's podcast dives into the juiciest pop culture moments, exploring everything from the hottest scandals to the stories shaping Hollywood. She brings a sharp, witty, and insightful voice to every topic. And today we're lucky to have her sharing her expertise on the creation and evolution of Hollywood. Kimberly's knack for finding the connections between pop culture's past and present is unmatched, and we can't wait to hear her thoughts on the early days of Tinseltown and how it led us to the glitz and the glamour of award shows today. So, welcome to the show, Kimberly.
Thank you so much. And what an introduction. Thank you. Oh my gosh, that was so great. And not only that,
I'm
but
trying
I'm so
to enter my channel my inner Ryan Bailey. So hopefully I did
no,
that.
it's funny while we were here, I started following Cassandra's Instagram. I'm like, oh my gosh. So I am obsessed. I didn't realize, oh my gosh, the NC Lawyer podcast. I didn't know that was you. Oh my goodness. Okay. Oh, this is fun. It's
That's a
gonna be
whole other
exciting.
deep dive we'll get
Yeah, I
in.
know. I know.
But yes.
But it's so
Interesting. Yeah.
relevant to what you do. And just like having
Hmm.
women like you in this space is harm reduction in itself, right? I mean, because you can tell gossip in a way that a man cannot because of your lived experiences as a woman.
But Kimberly, thank you so much for joining today. You were one of the first to have me on your podcast as well, both of you ladies. But if you could please let the audience know where they can follow you and what anything else you would like for them to know about your podcast and yourself.
Sure. Let's see. I collided started a podcast with my twin sister a little over a year ago. It really started as a concept we had because well, actually we thought about the idea about 3 years ago because I was living in San Diego. She was still right outside of New Orleans. We don't have much in common, but the one thing we had in common was our love for pop culture, celebrity gossip, news stories, all that juice. And so we were like, why not start a podcast? So we started it, just got it going. And the great thing was we actually utilized our degrees that we had spent all this money on our college education. So my background is in mass communications, broadcast journalism. That's why I have my bachelor's degree. Blair is organizational communications. So we do come together and kind of have that commonality. But it's fun. I absolutely love it. We're following our family's footsteps in the entertainment industry in a way. This is a little bit
Definitely.
different. There were a lot bigger screen, there are bigger screens now and also Broadway. But you know what? It's like, getting where you fit in. So but yeah, you can find us at the Pop Culture Green Room on Instagram, also on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and TikTok. It's a little tricky. It's the dot pop culture green room. And we're also on X at the Pop Culture Green Room.
Perfect. Thank you, ladies. Now let's dive into some of the pop culture aspects. First of all, I want to start off every episode as always. While every episode will change throughout, the consistent thread will be the love for pop culture. Um, so ladies, is there a particular moment or a story that first sparked your passion for pop culture? And I'll start with Cassandra first.
I gave this a lot of thought because I know you were saying like in the context of early Hollywood, right?
And early
Definitely.
Hollywood or all together, whatever works.
I think I have too many answers. Like definitely the Wizard of Oz and just hearing that all of the weird things that happened on the set of the Wizard of Oz and like the conspiracies and it's haunting and things and like Poltergeist, which is a whole can of worms that we'll get into one day, Dani,
Oh
with
yeah,
Heather,
that is an upcoming episode very soon. Maybe
Right.
episode
And
3 or 4, hopefully.
Fred Rogers and his speech to Congress in 1969.
Oh yes.
That sticks out to me. And it's something I think about every week. I mean, and also when I was young, I was probably 6 when my dad gave me the VHS tape of Freaks. And it, that movie, I mean, I don't know if you know much about it. It came out in 1932, but it was really controversial. It's actually still really controversial, but they used real sideshow freaks and it was like in the horror genre. It was MGM, very old, Hollywood scandal. And, still to this day, it's an interesting conversation that I have all the time with my friends about, where is the line with creativity and responsibility? And the outcasts of society and art and things like that, right?
Mm-hmm. And then also profiting off of someone as well in certain scenarios, kind of like the freak situation.
Yeah, I mean, and film scholars have interpreted it as a metaphor for like class conflict and it, being reflecting like the Great Depression. And it's been studied for its portrayal of people with disabilities, with theorists arguing that it presents like an anti-eugenics message. So I don't know, definitely just things like that. Like I've always been interested in film and art. My dad was in radio, my grandfather was in radio. So I feel like it's just
Oh,
always kind of been a part of my life,
lovely. And how about you, Kimberly?
So let's see here. It's funny that Cassandra mentioned Wizard of Oz because when you talk about pop culture, and when I looked at the years between the 1930s and 1950s, that's actually one of the first things that came to mind. But for me, I would definitely say music is really what sparked off my love for pop culture, and just growing up and just growing around up with my father, listening to a lot of like jazz music and blues and R&B, and just growing up in South Louisiana, and then
So
him coming
cool.
up. Oh, thank you. Him coming up was very fascinating because our grandfather and our relatives, they owned nightclubs where famous people like James Brown performed and Sam Cooke. So he got to see all these artists come through. So that right there just sparked an interest and a fascination for me, like, and that genre, that era of that time period. And for me, like Wizard of Oz, like that's whenever I was like really like, okay, I want to dissect everything. Sometimes like people now, like they've got like their careers and different things that they're interested in, like how things move and like what fascinates them and what they're passionate about. For me, it was like thinking about the Wizard of Oz, I just wanted to know more about what's going on. How do they make this happen? Like, what are these effects that are being used? Who makes these costumes? The costumes are what really
Yeah.
fascinated me. The sparkles, the um, just the brightness and the things that pop. And
The
I was
color
just
changing
fascinated by it.
horse. How did
Yeah,
that
oh yeah,
happen?
definitely. And it's just and just the fact that these people were able to become someone else, like on television, and that's not who they were in real life. It just fascinated me as a child growing up. And then not only that, but I got to also see my cousin on television growing up. So, and acting and performing. So that was really fascinating. So I had her to look up to. And but yeah, I would say that's definitely where my fascination and love came from. So it's like Cassandra said as well, it's kind of like a family thing for me. So yeah, I would say that's my answer in a nutshell.
Thank you for sharing. And for anyone who does not know, do you mind sharing who your cousin is?
Not at all. So my cousin I was referring to is Deborah Pratt. She's an actress, director. She directed Grey's Anatomy, Magnum PI. She was on years ago too. She was executive producer also for like Airwolf, creator of the show Quantum Leap, executive producer of the reboot as well of Quantum Leap. And her daughter, also my cousin, obviously, is Troy Belisario that starred on Pretty Little Liars. So that's all
Thank
like
you.
our, yeah, my
Yeah, keeping
family. And
it
her
in the
mom was on our
family with
podcast
entertainment.
a few weeks ago, actually. So yeah, a nice little family
Yeah, it was a
affair.
great episode. Very, very woman empowerment episode. I can't say like
Thank you.
either of you guys that have anyone from the entertainment industry. I was just a latchkey kid that grew up in front of the TV and had to raise my two sisters. So that's how I got into it. But we mentioned the film of Wizard of Oz. So was that the first film or a pop culture moment that left a lasting impression on you, or were there any other movies that left a lasting impression on you?
For me, I would say that wasn't the only one that left a lasting impression on me. The next one I would say into like my adult phase, grown woman phase, I would say a streetcar named Desire. Like that was right there. Like that was a film, a play actually that was adapted into a film, and it just like really drew me in. That's like when I really got to learn about Marlon Brando. He became like one of my favorite like pastime
Ooh,
actors, and that's when I started to kind of do research. So I'm like, I was like, okay, let's see if Heartthrobs back in like years ago and all these things. So
Yeah, he was
it was
definitely one.
right. And it fascinated me, especially with the background of with it like being based in New Orleans. So it's kind of like it was,
Oh,
yeah,
I
I
didn't
would
know that.
definitely say that's where like it just kind of like came naturally. And then from there I would actually look for older films that were made like outside of like not outside, but like within Louisiana and New Orleans, because that's where it's kind of like and then just snowballed from there, to be honest.
Hmm. Any other movies or moments for you, Cassandra?
I mean, Moments is such a can of worms, right? Because I remember being young and seeing John Benet Ramsey's face on magazine covers, like in the
Mm,
grocery store line when I was a kid.
yeah.
And,
Mhm.
that kind of being like the first taste of like not Hollywood, but just like scandal and like sensationalism. Um, and like OJ, the Simpson trial was really big when we were young.
Mhm.
Um,
Yes,
definitely.
plastered everywhere.
Yeah, and like my mom was always
Oh
watching
yeah.
old movies when I was a kid. Like I was very big into Audrey Hepburn, um, like Bell Book and Candle. I liked classic. I liked black and white movies. Um, but I don't know. I do think that there's so many moments, but when you talk about like old Hollywood, maybe the Fatty Arbuckle case, I think might have been the first like old
Oh
true crime
yeah.
Hollywood thing I got into.
Yeah, I just recently learned
Mm.
about that. And the murder, I had no idea. I've always heard him reference over the years, but going through the history of pop culture has kind of been an emotional experience
Hmm.
for me. And I really realized my first love, and I told my husband this, thank goodness he still loves me. Pop culture is my first love, you know? But it was just such a trip to learn that because you always hear Fatty Arbuckle, but then a lot of times he's talked in a good way. At least I've heard over the years, maybe from my dad and other folks and stuff. But I couldn't believe that murder,
Oh,
Cassandra.
and
It was
I would be
wild.
remiss not to mention like the whole discovery of like the Andy Warhol, Peter Max, Grey
Oh
Gardens,
yeah.
Kennedy era, right? That whole
Hmm.
wormhole.
Oh, 1000%. Yeah, you can't forget
That's a good
that.
wormhole, though.
That's true.
Fitzgerald,
Hmm.
right? It takes you into
Oh
like
yeah.
American literature and like to bring it back to Troyan, like um
Hmm.
with Marlene King, she writes Now and Then. She's talking now and then she's talking about Thomas Wolfe, one of the greatest American writers, is talking about you can't go home again. And that's a theme we see throughout American literature forever, and it's like it's beautiful, and that's what makes up like American spoken word folklore. And a lot of that stuff becomes like a part of our pop culture.
That's
Very well
so
said. Wait a
true.
minute.
Hmm.
The writer of Now and Then wrote Pretty Little Liars?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't even know
You just
that.
blew my mind.
Oh, I didn't know
You
that.
just blew my mind. Two of my
And it makes
favorites.
sense
That
if
makes
you
so
think
much
about
Oh.
sense
it,
now.
because like it's all about friendship.
Totally.
It's all
Oh,
about
Totally.
that didn't even occur to me. Oh, that's so funny.
Wow.
Oh, more trivia I didn't
The
know.
more you
See, learn something new every
know.
day. I like this. See, this is why I
Yes.
was excited about
Thank
it.
you,
That's so
Cassandra.
funny. Yeah, oh yeah. And actually, speaking of true crime, if you don't mind me asking this little question, have any of y'all ever watched the show A Crime to Remember? Because we're talking about like dated, like kind of like it was a show on investigation discovery. It actually won an Emmy. It didn't last long. They canceled it after a few years, but it was like one of the best like directed and produced like true crime series on investigation discover, in my opinion, because they focused on crimes that like made that like um were like basically like pivotal moments, basically in pop culture and in news and history. Like they covered like the shooter from Austin, Texas, like that shot the people like at the University of Texas.
Mhm.
They covered that case, and not the Black Dahlia, like some other ones, like famous
No, that's a good one.
kind of infamous cases. But it just made me think of that whenever we were talking about the some of the
That
crimes.
sounds so good.
No, I
Yeah,
haven't
it's pretty
seen
good.
that. It sounds very interesting. And I love shows like that or unsolved mysteries. I
I
just like
posted it for a
those
little bit.
shows though.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and
Um,
that brings up
but
another
I also
one.
want to sleep at night, so I don't watch too much of that. But go ahead, Cassandra.
No, yeah, another one I was gonna mention was Coast to Coast, right? Like a lot of us grew up listening to Coast or Loveline.
Oh, Love
Oh
Line.
yes, Loveline. I was thinking about that the other day.
But like,
Forgot about Love Line. Yeah.
Yes. So speaking of Loveline, I really feel like that is one of the most modern, even though Loveline was a bit ago. I feel old just thinking about it and how much I learned from Loveline. But I feel like that is one of the most modern moments that ties back to the late 19th to early 20th centuries, where everyone was
Mhm.
around the radio listening to this knowledge or this enticing story. I feel like
appointment
that
programming.
was
Mhm.
one of the first shows to bring you back to that appointment programming on radio, or sometimes I think if you were watching it on MTV, late at night shows like that, and also
Mhm.
Howard Stern really brings it back to that time period.
That's so true. I remember like late night radio. It was so much fun, especially
Mm-hmm.
like the older you got. Like that was like your chill time. Like if you weren't going out like at night with your friends or whatever, that's what I did. Like especially when I was in college. That was yep.
Yeah, and that was my sex education. Oh
I'm like, oh God, I was like,
lordy.
I'm talking about like that was in college. I was
Oh,
like, I'm really showing my age.
I can't get started on Dr. Drew and Adam Carolla because I am unapologetically a huge fan of Loveline, and I like it's sick how much Loveline I've listened to. It's sick. Like it's not good.
Oh, that is so funny.
Been a hot minute since I listened to it. Um, but going back to Dr. Drew, not diving into Dr. Drew, but I feel like Dr. Drew has at times dealt with controlled stars. We won't get into his practices, like that's a whole other deep dive, and people can go any which way on that. That's not what today is for. But thinking back to the golden age of Hollywood, that is very romanticized.
Which his mom was a
But there
famous
was very
actress, by the way. Silent film
oh, I
actress. Yeah.
forgot about that.
Oh, that's
Cassandra, I
right.
love
I heard that
you.
on a podcast a few months ago, actually. Yeah, I didn't even know that.
Oh, connecting the dots. I love you, Cassandra. Um, but while it was put up on this pedestal, there were those crazy studios that was controlling stars like Judy Garland, Marilyn Monroe, the demises of them.
Shirley
Rita
Temple.
Haywor's Betty. Yeah,
Hmm.
oh God. So there was just a lot of controlling taking place. Thinking back to then, what do you think about that time period, and also how it shaped today and stars that maybe Dr. Drew has dealt with, or Britney Spears and whatnot? What do you ladies think?
I feel
Maybe
like
starting with you first,
back then,
Cassandra.
oh, I'm sorry.
Or
Oh,
go ahead. No, no. Go ahead, Kimberly.
I feel like it's like when you really look back at it, it's sad because it's an eye opener, or especially given what today's 2024. And when you look back, and especially when I look back at like my parents' generation, my grandparents' generation, it's like it was like that was the cultural norms. Like women were supposed to have like their place, in society, and even like in film and work on set. It's like they were being controlled, and I mean, so much was going on that's not acceptable, and you couldn't do anything about it. You couldn't talk about it, and it's sad because it even still goes on now. I think right now people have more of a voice, um, and they're vocal about it. But back then, it just seems like it's so crazy. It was just so acceptable, and it had to be accepted. And nowadays, it's like you can speak up and fight against it. And like,
You
look at us
can, but
now, like
it's
three
still
women.
definitely going on. Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
definitely.
And if a woman knows how to speak up, it is Cassandra. Oh,
I can tell
can't wait to
you, I have
get
a
into that
friend.
story, but go ahead, Cassandra.
I have a friend who's an actress who just had a horrible experience that many people told her to go to the police about, and she refuses to because the guy is a somewhat famous actor. and she's just afraid it'll ruin her career. So I mean, it's like, yeah, it's like twofold, right? Because even though some
Hmm.
things have gotten better, there's still just a lot of things that haven't gotten better or just still need to evolve. And then like the microcosm of all of this media that was shoved down our throats about like women being crazy and lesser than, and
Hmm.
the anorexia culture with like Mary Kate and Ashley, and like all Shirley Temple, and using these child actors that look way younger, but they're older, and disposing of them, and like just fetishizing children. It deeply impacted our society, like
Yeah.
deeply. And
Hmm.
I mean, just as a woman, I know I'll never not have an eating disorder because of the way that we were raised and the media we were shown. Um, and then there's also the aspect of it of like the cultural appropriation of culture, of like these, like even something I did an episode on Sublime. I thought it was going to be a cool nostalgia episode. Come to find out, it's like all lifted from Black artists, stolen music, and we see that
Oh.
as far back as like
Mm.
Elvis and the Beatles, and like just appropriating from all these cultures. Um, and it's so I just think it's so important for us to have an intention behind the art that we create and the things that we put out into this world. Because there are so many people out there that are just putting out content for money. And I don't
Hmm.
think, that's a new thing. Like that's been going on since old Hollywood. Shirley Temple was made to fetishize, it was made for the male gaze, sadly.
And then you have Amanda Bynes as the modern version, and we
Yeah.
see
Oh God, yeah,
how
and how
that has turned
tragic.
out.
I know. Oh, it's
Yeah.
so tragic and it's sad. And the one thing it what makes it reminds me of, like child actors and everything. Like, because whenever y'all brought up Shirley Temple, it just made me think it's because for a long time I just never thought that it was such like an impact or a problem until like years later. It's like, I mean, like years later for me when I grew up and I started to like to dip into the
Yeah.
entertainment industry and I started to figure out and discover like more and more. I was like, oh my gosh, I was like, this is crazy. It's like it's the way that even kids are just being like sexualized and everything. And it's like
Hmm.
and it's true. Like what are your intentions behind everything that you produce? Because it's a lot of people they are mass producing content just to do it just to make money. And I'm
Right.
glad to see that we're not like that.
Well,
Obviously,
and
like we've
Yeah.
got just mhm.
it's like not just the entertainment industry as far as movies and TV, Dani, right? Like it's also the music industry. And that's what we saw with
Oh,
Aaron
yes.
Carter. Like we
Mhm.
saw Aaron Carter be
Mhm.
like put on that child star pipeline until he died.
Yeah, used and
That's so
abused.
true. Mhm.
But Kimberly, I've been thinking about it a lot lately because I've been rewatching Pretty Little Liars from the start. And
Uh,
especially after listening to your interview with your cousin and her upbringing and how she raised Troy and her kids,
mhm.
which not everyone in Hollywood and young Hollywood is lucky enough to have that upbringing, that background, that
Right.
making sure your head is on straight, you're
Mhm.
doing the right things. I hope one day you get the opportunity to interview her and just find out what an impact that makes because there are others on the show that have gone down other paths at time along with
Mhm.
other young actresses, so it's wild.
Oh, no, definitely, for sure. Like, I will say, yeah, I would love to have Troy on a podcast. We're gonna work on it. It's a work in progress, but the good thing is I will say this that the way that their mom had just like raised them and brought them up, it's like she raised them with responsibilities, like and just to let them know that they're fortunate. They've that they're fortunate compared to a lot of other kids growing up. There's a lot of people who didn't have what they had and who had the background as well. And what I did appreciate, I really did like, because of course, Troy, she started off acting when she was young, when she was little. That was fun. that was fun, just watching your cousin like little, like close to your age on TV and everything. But what I liked was the fact, actually, what I loved was that Deborah pulled her out. Like when she was at a certain age, she pulled her out of acting, and she just made her, she had her be a kid, like go to school and work on, her education and live and do activities. And then whenever she was old enough and she was grown and, was in college and then got out of college, it's like she made the decision that she wanted to continue her mom's footsteps, her dad's footsteps, family in the
Yeah.
entertainment industry. And the girl's got talent. I mean, come on now. So, but I would definitely say like they're bearing and they're wheeling. It had a lot to
Yeah.
do with it. I mean, it's great, and I love it. I appreciate them for it. So
Yeah, for sure. They're definitely the blueprint of hopefully how Hollywood parents are. Um, Speaking of Hollywood parents in Hollywood, most recently was the Emmys that took place, so award season is
well,
taking
that's right.
place. Yes. And part of early Hollywood was the start of Hollywood award shows like the Oscars, which started in the early 20th century. So, what do you ladies think was the original purpose behind creating such shows and how it has evolved over the years and the purpose, whether or not it's the Emmys or the Teen Choice Awards or MTV Music Awards? Not that there's any music videos, but what do you guys think?
Oh, for the music videos, you got to go on YouTube now.
Yeah.
Um, my thoughts are it's definitely evolved. It's grown a lot, but then we still have like a long way to go. Like I was watching, it wasn't just recently. It was for the Bear. It was one of the actresses on the Bear, and I forgive me, I can't
The
remember her name, but she
female?
was, yes, and she just recently just like
The
what
first
won an Emmy.
Latina?
Yeah,
Yes. Lisa Colin Zayas. That's who I wanted to
that's
mention. Such an amazing accomplishment. She was
isn't
the
it?
first Latina to win Best Supporting Actress.
But at the same time, it's kind of
It
like you
should
look
have
at this,
happened a long time
it's a
ago.
long time
Yeah,
ago.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's where it's like I'm saying it's kind of like we still have a long way to go in
Mm-hmm.
society, and you could still see the racial barriers. It's where it's everywhere, and it's where things are just it's hard to break in, and especially with Hollywood. But like I said, it's like 2024, and she's the first Latina actress. Like that kind of blew my mind a bit. But then again, I wasn't surprised at the same time. So.
Yeah, I feel like the ultimate meaningful purpose of an award show and those accolades, I don't know, I just feel like it's really hidden by a lot of secret hidden truths and
Mhm.
purposes that have evolved over the years. I love watching it from afar, but I'm sure Cassandra, you
Um,
have some things to say about kid award shows.
Well, yeah. I mean, I feel like I loved the MTV Music Awards, the Nickelodeon Kid Choice Awards. Now looking back with Brian Peck and all of them, it's super creepy. It's a couple things, right? Like it's
Mm-hmm.
in we know that in like 1946, soldiers come back from the war and young couples are like kind of resuming their daily lives. And that means that people are attending movies again. So I think that that contributes to why we see all of these award shows coming into play. But there's also been extensive writing as to like why basically it was kind of a coup just of but like by rich white men to executive directors like to kind of circle jerk and give themselves awards and like keep all the talent and money concentrated in one place.
Mm-hmm.
And like Metro Goldwyn Mayer and that they had established the Academy Motion Picture Arts and Science Awards in 1927. So I mean it goes pretty far back. And
Yeah.
I think although one of my favorite award like stories is when Charlie Rich burned John Denver's award in 1974. Do you remember that?
No, I'm
his
not
country music
familiar.
Oh,
award.
yeah. Oh, that's news to me. That's very new to me.
No, do tell,
Oh, fill us in.
Cassandra.
Yeah. I want to know.
It was at the Country Music Awards in 1974, and Charlie Rich was presenting, and he goes to read the award for Best Country Musician, and the winner is John Denver, and he lights his award on fire. He got banned from the awards for life, you know. And some say that the incident was like a bold protest against basically the infiltration of on country music by pop, right? And like
Hmm.
pop acts like John Denver, which I find really interesting. And like people have argued whether it actually was or he was just drunk and high, but it's just such a
Maybe
fascinating
both.
story to me.
Right.
So you probably wouldn't have been too big of a fan of Beyonce's moves over the last year, I imagine.
All of that old country is steeped in
Hmm.
so much history. There's a podcast I would recommend for anybody who's into like Americana and country music history dating back like 1920s and up. It's called Cowboys and Rhinestones, or sorry, Cocaine and Rhinestones. And they're turning the second season into a book, an audiobook. So yeah, definitely check them out. It's really good.
Cool.
Yeah, definitely will.
So thinking back to this past weekend's Emmys, are there any surprising wins or snubs that stick out in your heads at all? I know we mentioned Lisa Colin-Zayas from The Bear winning her as the first Latina as a supporting actress. Any other ones that you guys can think of?
Not that I can really think of. That was the one that stood out to me the most, to be honest. Like I had so much going on. I didn't even really get caught up with with it, with
Totally
the
get
Emmys thing.
it.
So that was, yeah. Oh my
Another
gosh.
one
Like,
that I loved is Cassandra, I imagine you have watched this, maybe. And maybe you too, Kimberly, the new girl or new girl.
I
Did you ever see
haven't.
that?
yeah, I
No?
haven't, yeah, I haven't seen,
Oh, I'm
yeah.
surprised. Well,
I know one
Lamar,
would think that was a show that I would have watched, but yeah, I didn't.
it's a really funny show. It might be good to watch if you ever want to binge watch something. It's good to have in the background. Super funny.
Yeah,
Belly
I'm
laughs
in a
galore.
bingeable
Everyone
mood.
is so talented on that show. Talk about a stacked cast. But Lamar Morris, who is one of the funniest people in the cast, he just won for supporting actor in a limited series. But for the show
Okay.
Fargo, which is like wild to
Hmm.
imagine, because he came from the
Mhm.
show New Girl, which is such a comedic show. You wouldn't picture him being in something like
Okay.
Fargo. But the reason why I loved it the most, because the moment when he found out he was even nominated, he found out in
Hmm.
front of his little daughter, who might be like 5 or 4 years old, and he was just like hysterically crying. She's like, "Why are you crying?"
Oh,
So
that's
to
so
see
cute.
that and then to see him on stage win and how far he's come in his career, it's really amazing. So that's one that I enjoy the
I
most.
mean,
Oh.
I have friends that were very triggered by Baby Reindeer and hated it, and they were upset that it won so many awards. I will say I was happy the morning show won for something. That was cool.
Oh, it did win for something? Yeah, okay. I started to watch it. I need to catch up with it because one of my friends is on it.
It's so good. I love
Yeah,
it.
I've only watched the first two
Oh,
seasons. I don't have Apple TV is the only streaming service I
Hmm.
probably don't have.
yeah.
Just
But
wait till the
over
new season comes out, and then you can binge all of them at once, you know?
okay,
And I was, yeah,
perfect.
I started watching it. And, it's so funny because I need to text him because he's supposed to come on our podcast. I can't remember who he played, but I started watching it. I'm only like two seasons, no, like two episodes into season one. So like I was like new and fresh into watching it, but like I haven't started like in a while.
Think you'll both enjoy it so much because it delves into like how news disseminates and how gossip disseminates and all of that. I mean, it is like right up
Oh,
both your alleys.
yeah, oh, for sure, definitely. Let's see. I'm trying to see, but yeah, I don't like I said, I started watching it. I definitely want to pick up and watch it because I'm in my bingeable season right now. I want to binge all the shows that I haven't seen.
Real quick, just some last minute questions. Kimberly, your podcast, Pop Culture Green Room, it explores various facets of celebrity culture. What themes from early pop culture have you found still resonate today in the entertainment industry?
That is a good question. I would definitely say it's the older generation that still holds the power in Hollywood. I think that you could still kind of see the residue of it. You could
Yeah,
still
that's very
see that
true.
it's yeah, that it's still there while it's trying to change and evolve. You could
Mm-hmm.
still see that where it's like that hold, but and that pull, but it's starting to die out. So it's
I
kind of
agree.
it's very fascinating, but and then also it just sees the way that I see how modern technology has played such a huge role, just even from growing up as a kid. I mean, I'm 43 years old now, but it's just like, oh my God, it's like things have just changed and advanced so much. And then I just rewinded back years with like 20 years even before I was born, and just how differently things were back then. It's crazy. It's just it's so weird. It seems like it was 200 years ago, and it really wasn't. Just with the advancements corporation of it, with especially with how we get our news now, like people have their cell phones and they're sending screenshots and videos and things to like TMC, and things are getting reported that way, so it's not always someone with a camera like on site,
Yeah.
and that fascinates me because it's different, because back when I used to always be into started getting into like pop culture and celebrity news, it was like Bop magazine, like those magazines and everything. It's so it wasn't, we didn't have like what we've got now on the computers and everything. So yeah, that's my take.
And Cassandra, in your work, you have come across, or have you come across any stories or hidden gems from early pop culture that you feel is really under discussed or forgotten today?
Uh, definite too many to count, but and I know how psychotic what I'm about to say is gonna sound, but okay. You know the Aaron Carter song I Want Candy?
Yeah.
Hmm.
I know a lot of people know like it was a remake, right? But I did a
Right.
deep dive into the cultural phenomenon of the song, and like strangely the strangely timeless song released by the Strangeloves in 1965 has a deep-rooted connection to tribal drumming. And the Strangeloves were inspired to write I Want Candy after they took a trip to the 1960 fair for World's Fair, and producers saw a performance by Johnson, who was a dancer. And she was known as Miss Perpetual Motion. So she's like a whole thing in herself. And
Oh.
it's so interesting because they would rock bands back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. They're looking for inspiration, right? They've already mined the blues scene in the South, okay? And now they're going to like these other countries, India, Africa, and they're getting these tribal drumming beats, and sounds from all over the world. And producers are bringing them back and bringing them to these Lou Pearlman type, like formulated bands, like think the Archies,
Uh-huh.
and coming up with things like I Want Candy. And so much of our music history is unknown, or like
Yeah.
most people don't know it. So that's one that I found that
Yeah.
I think about all the time. And just like I've been working on a book about Brittany Murphy that's kind of like a coffee table book, and it's quotes that I've collected from celebrities, just random 90s celebrities that I've interviewed about
Hmm.
Britney. And
I
so
love that.
Oh wow.
that's fun. And I don't know, just like really the work that I'm most proud of is like my interview with Mitchell Kriegman, who did Clarissa Explains It All and Bear in the Big Blue House, because I think he's such an icon for like children's television, and Mark Summers, who is such a good guy. And I don't know, I think that we have to put these people that are intentionally putting good things out into the world, we have to, you know, put these people on a pedestal and talk about them more.
I
Yeah.
agree.
And then because yeah, I just do. I think that there's like a responsibility that comes with it when we're talking about even pop, like even pop culture, that we're talking about social issues, you know?
Last question for both of you, ladies. What is the one historical pop culture figure that you would love to cover in depth in your podcast, or let's say even interview, like in your dream world? Because you feel like their influence is still relevant today. So what do you think?
Yes, I'll start because I've got, you know,
Yeah, go for
okay.
it.
No, if I could interview anybody, I'll be honest, it would be Adam Carolla, only because he's such an enigma. I don't know. In my mind, like I grew up listening to him. He's the ultimate podcaster. I do not agree with almost anything he spews lately, but I just think he's interesting and I'd love to pick his brain because pro tip, if you go back and listen to all those Loveline episodes, they had celebrities on them, like 90s celebrities that have blown up now.
Mhm.
And they were saying wild things because they didn't think that those were going to be recorded. So
I believe that.
yeah, I've done like entire episodes of Marilyn Manson on Loveline. Just some
Oh,
of my
wow.
greatest research has come from old Loveline episodes, you know. But I'd
Very
love,
interesting.
right? I'd love to deep dive into like Loretta Lynn because she was probably the most progressive trailblazing country music singer ever. And I haven't done any episodes on her and like Dolly Parton and I don't know. Yeah, there's just so many that I would love to deep dive.
In due time, Cassandra.
Yeah.
Any last minute thoughts for you, Kimberly?
I'd say if I had to go back and like interview somebody and sit with them, I've thought of it. It took me a little while, but Billie Holiday. Like if I had
Oh,
to go
that's a
back in
good
time and just
one.
because just
Yeah.
like the hard life that she lived,
Yeah.
and it's like it's such a fascinating story, and I didn't know more about it like in depth until a few years ago. When I did some research on her, but just like she had this voice and she used it, and that's where I found out that the root of like addiction, how it was like a real thing and how it was a thing for a long time, and that's what's something that she suffered and she battled with as well. And so I just find it fascinating just to kind of if I could just like walk with her and just observe, you know, her life and just have a conversation with her and just see what her thoughts were and like what she thinks like of her present time, like what was going on.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful. All great. If I was to pick one person, I think it would probably be Keith Haring, the pop artist. Because he accomplished so much in his short life and left such a lasting
Mhm.
impression. And my art soul just loves him. But
Oh.
that's who I would pick. That would make for a really great party, though, guys. Really great dinner party.
Mhm.
The three of us with all of them. But I
Oh
really
my gosh, yes.
appreciate it all. And that's a wrap, guys, on this episode of Pop Culture Expose. A huge thank you to both Cassandra Cross and Kimberly Bryant for joining me today. We've had such a blast talking about the early days of Hollywood, the glitz and the glamour of the golden age, and of course, diving into some of the latest award show buzz. It is clear that why we may not be historians, we all love ourselves some pop culture, whether it's from the past or what's happening right now. So, if you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to follow Cassandra and Kimberly. I will make sure to share their information with all of you. You can catch Kimberly on her podcast, Pop Culture Green Room, where she and her co host, twin sister, break down all of the juiciest gossip and pop culture moments. And of course, Cassandra on Drenched in Drama on social media as well, and where you listen to podcasts. And lastly, and of course, if you love this conversation, make sure to hit that subscribe button, leave a review, and tune in next time. We've got plenty more pop culture deep dives, celebrity blinds, and behind the scenes stories coming your way. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode of Pop Culture Expose, where we cover revolution, rock stars, and rumors, scandals that shaped the 60s and 70s. So thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Tune into the buzz, it's the talk of the day. From Bravo shows to the latest celeb spree, we've got the tea, come sip it with me. Dani gossip,